The thunder cracked like a gunshot outside the Rainier Motel, shaking the thin walls and rattling the loose change in my pocket. I slammed the car door, my soaked sneakers squelching on the gravel as rain pelted my face like accusations from an old lover. "Last room's gone," the clerk had said, her voice flat as Kansas asphalt. But when she glanced at the ledger and muttered about a double-booking glitch, my heart sank deeper than the flooded ditches lining Route 66. I'd been driving for 12 hours straight, fleeing the sterile glow of my Chicago apartment and the ghost of Marcus's laughter echoing in its empty corners. He was the reason for this impulsive road trip, a freelance gig photographing abandoned diners for some hipster magazine that paid in exposure and regret. Marcus, with his easy grin and promises that crumbled like stale cornbread, had left me 6 months ago for a barista half my age, whispering, "It's not you, Alex, it's the spark, as if love were a faulty lighter. Now here I was, 32 and adrift, chasing sunsets that never quite ignited. The clerk, Darlene, her name tag read, faded like everything else in this Dust Bowl town, eyed me with pity. "Storm's only gettin' worse, hon. Got one room left, queen bed. It's either that or sleep in your Chevy with the coyotes." I hesitated, my duffel bag heavy on my shoulder, water dripping from my hoodie onto the checkered linoleum. Share with a stranger? In Elk City, Oklahoma, population 11,693 and dropping? But the lightning forked again, illuminating the parking lot like a divine warning, and I nodded. "Fine. Who's the unlucky bastard?" She jerked her thumb toward the lobby bench, where a guy sat hunched over a sketchpad, his dark hair tousled like he'd wrestled the wind and lost. He looked up then, those hazel eyes catching mine. Sharp, guarded like a fox sizing up a trap. "Jordan," he said, standing with a grace that belied the mud caking his boots. His voice was low, laced with a southern drawl softened by city edges, maybe Atlanta or Nashville. He extended a hand, calloused from whatever rough trade kept him wandering. "Looks like we're bunkmates tonight." The room smelled of mothballs and yesterday's regret, the kind that clings to budget sheets. A single lamp buzzed on the nightstand, casting long shadows across the peeling wallpaper adorned with faded roses. The bed dominated the space, its quilt a patchwork of faded blues, flanked by 2 creaky chairs and a TV bolted to the wall like a hostage. Outside, the storm howled, wind whipping rain against the window in sheets that blurred the neon glow of the motel's sign. I dropped my bag by the door, peeling off my wet jacket, acutely aware of Jordan mirroring me across the room. His flannel shirt unbuttoned just enough to reveal a tattoo snaking up his collarbone. A compass rose etched in black ink, pointing nowhere. We circled each other like wary dogs, unpacking silences heavy with unspoken questions. "Photographer?" he asked, nodding at my camera case, his sketchpad tucked under his arm like a shield. I grunted affirmation, avoiding his gaze as I toweled my hair. "Artist?" he offered in return, flipping open the pad to reveal charcoal strokes of a crumbling barn, shadows bleeding into storm clouds. His lines were bold, unapologetic, the way mine never were. I shot landscapes to hide from people. He drew ruins to confront them. The awkwardness thickened until the power flickered, plunging us into gray twilight. "Great," I muttered, fumbling for my phone's flashlight. Jordan chuckled, a sound like gravel under tires. "Warm, unexpected. Power's out half the time here. Darlene says it's the ghosts." He rummaged in his pack, producing a half-empty bottle of bourbon and 2 plastic cups from the motel dispenser. "To accidental roomies," he toasted, pouring amber liquid that caught the weak beam like liquid fire. I took it, the burn chasing the chill from my bones, loosening the knot in my chest. We talked then, words spilling like the rain outside. He was from Savannah, a muralist chasing commissions that never quite paid the gas for his beat-up Ford Ranger. Last one fell through in Tulsa. Some rich prick decided abstract cows were too queer for his ranch. The word hung there, casual as the storm, but it landed like a spark on dry tinder. Queer. I hadn't said it aloud since Marcus, who preferred ally on his Grindr profile. Jordan's eyes held mine, steady, no judgment, just a quiet knowing that made my pulse stutter. I told him about Chicago, the high-rises that choked the sky, the freelance grind that left me hollow. And the ex, I added, the bourbon loosening my tongue. He bailed for someone who didn't question his journey of self-discovery. Jordan's laugh was bitter, mirroring my own ache. Mine ghosted after I came out to his mama. Said it was too much drama for the family Christmas card. We clinked cups again, the storm our only witness, and for the first time in months the weight lifted, just a fraction but enough to breathe. As the night deepened, the power stayed out, forcing us closer. We dragged the chairs to the window, watching lightning etch the plains in silver veins. Jordan sketched by phone light, his pencil whispering across paper, capturing the motel's flickering sign. "What's it like?" I asked, emboldened by the dark. "Drawing what hurts?" He paused, eyes distant. "It's like bleeding on purpose. Makes the scars mean something." His vulnerability cracked me open, and I found myself sharing photos. Not the polished ones for clients, but raw shots from my drive. Rusted silos at dawn, empty swings in ghost towns, echoes of my own unraveling. Attraction simmered beneath the words, subtle as the humidity pressing against the glass. His knee brushed mine when he leaned to point out a double rainbow fracturing the horizon, and neither of us pulled away. There was a pull there, magnetic, born of shared fractures. The way his fingers lingered on the cup, the soft curve of his jaw in lamplight when the power finally hummed back. But it was the stories that bound us. He spoke of his brother, lost to a car wreck on these same roads, how the compass tattoo was a promise to keep navigating. I confessed the fear that kept me shudder-bound, loving too fiercely, only to watch it shatter. By midnight, the storm ebbed to a drizzle, but we lingered, voices dropping to whispers. "Ever think about staying put?" Jordan asked, his sketchpad forgotten on the floor. I shook my head. "Feels like running's all I've got." He turned then, fully, his hand finding mine in the dimness. Not grabbing, but resting, thumb tracing a vein like he was mapping a new route. Maybe running leads somewhere worth stopping. The air thickened, charged, but we held back, the line between strangers and something more as fragile as the motel's thin walls. Sleep came fitful, the bed a demilitarized zone with pillows piled like sandbags down the center. I lay awake, listening to his breathing steady into rhythm, the bourbon's warmth fading into a deeper heat. Dreams tangled, Marcus's face morphing into Jordan's, highways unspooling into infinities. When dawn crept in, gray and unforgiving, I woke to find him already up, brewing motel coffee that tasted like regret watered down. We parted awkwardly over styrofoam cups, promises of "hit me up if you're in Savannah," exchanged like counterfeit bills. He scrawled his number on a napkin, tucked it into my camera case with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Safe travels, Alex. Don't let the ghosts drive." I watched his truck peel out, mud spraying the lot, a hollow opening in my chest where connection had briefly bloomed. The road stretched empty ahead, but something had shifted. The lens through which I saw the world felt less blurred, colors sharper against the overcast sky. Little did I know, that napkin would unravel everything, pulling me back into his orbit with a force that would test every scar we'd shared. The next 100 miles blurred into a haze of cornfields and crackling radio static, Johnny Cash crooning about walking the line as if he knew the tightrope I balanced. That napkin burned a hole in my glove compartment, Jordan's looping handwriting a siren call I ignored until Tulsa's skyline loomed, all glass and grit under a relentless sun. My assignment, there was a quick hit. Shoot the decay of the old oil barons' mansions for a spread on faded glory. But glory felt like a joke when my phone buzzed mid-frame, an unknown number flashing like a warning flare. "Alex, it's Jordan. Truck through a rod outside Joplin. You anywhere near?" His voice crackled over the line, laced with that drawl, now edged with exhaustion. I pictured him stranded on some shoulder, sketchpad ruined by heat, and before I could talk myself out of it, I was rerouting north, tires humming a reluctant tune. "On my way," I said, the words tasting like bourbon residue, reckless warm. Joplin was a patchwork of strip malls and boarded-up dreams, the kind of town that swallowed wanderers whole. I found him at a diner off I-44, slumped in a booth with a mechanic's grease-streaked invoice and a cooling coffee. He looked up as the bell jingled, surprise melting into relief, that fox-sharp gaze softening. "You didn't have to," he started, but I waved it off, sliding in across from him. "Consider it karma for the room. Besides, your truck looks like it could use a toe more than your ego." We laughed, the sound easing the diner's fluorescent hum, and over greasy eggs and hash browns that stuck to the roof of my mouth, the floodgates reopened. He confessed the mural gig hadn't just fallen through. It had imploded. The rancher, a bull-necked traditionalist named Harlan, had seen Jordan's portfolio online, clocked the pride flags woven into urban landscapes, and pulled the plug with a venomous email. "We don't need your kind tainting God's country." Jordan's fists clenched around his mug, knuckles white. "Like my brush makes me a threat. Like loving who I love erases the art." I knew that sting. The casual barbs from editors who loved my work but suggested less melancholy, more uplift. Marcus had wielded it sharper. His "I'm not ready for labels," a polite blade to the gut. "Screw 'em," I said, fiercer than intended. "Your cows were probably the most honest thing on that spread." He met my eyes then, a spark jumping the gap, and for a moment, the diner faded, leaving just us. Two queers in flyover country, forging alliance from ashes. The mechanic quoted 3 days for parts, stranding him longer than his dwindling cash could cover. "Crash at mine," I blurted, the offer slipping out like an exposure slip-up. Chicago was a haul, but the road felt less lonely with him shotgun. He hesitated, weighing me like one of his sketches, then nodded. "Only if you promise no more motel roulette." The drive north was a revelation. Windows down, classic rock blasting. His playlist a mix of Springsteen anthems and indie folk that tugged at heartstrings I thought frayed. He sketched roadside oddities. A billboard preaching salvation with a cracked Jesus. A herd of longhorns eyeing us like conspirators. I snapped candids of him lost in creation, the light catching the curve of his lashes, the faint scar above his lip from a childhood skateboarding wipeout. "Stop, you'll make me self-conscious," he teased. But there was heat in it, a flirtation dancing on the edges. Nights blurred in budget motels that paled against our first, but the pillows stayed piled, the bourbon shared. Conversations deepened, peeling back layers. He spoke of his mama, a steel magnolia who baked pecan pies and prayed away his phase, until cancer took her gentle denial. She loved me in her way, but acceptance? That was for Sundays only. I shared my own fractured family. Dad a cop who grunted approval at my hobby. Mom who sent birthday cards with passive-aggressive coupons for straightening up. We were mirrors, reflecting hurts we'd armored over, the vulnerability intoxicating. By the time Chicago's lights pierced the horizon, the air between us crackled like the storm that started it all. My apartment was a third-floor walk-up in Wicker Park, all exposed brick and mismatched furniture. The kind of place that screamed, trying too hard to be bohemian. Jordan whistled as I unlocked the door, dropping his duffel amid the clutter of prints and takeout menus. "Home sweet chaos," I quipped, but his presence filled the space, making it breathe. That first night we cooked pasta from a box, sauce doctored with whatever herbs wilted in my fridge, laughing over spilled wine and burnt garlic. The city thrummed below, horns and laughter filtering up like a soundtrack to possibility. After On the Fire Escape with City Lights as Stars, he turned to me, voice low. "Alex, that night in Elk City, it wasn't just the storm." His hand found mine again, deliberate this time, fingers lacing with a tenderness that undid me. I leaned in, our foreheads touching, breaths mingling in the humid night. The kiss, when it came, was inevitable, soft at first, exploratory, then deepening with the pent-up ache of roads untraveled. His lips tasted of Chianti and salt, his stubble rasping gently against my skin, a promise whispered in the dark. We pulled back, breathless, the world tilting. "This okay?" he murmured, eyes searching. "More than," I whispered back, the truth of it blooming in my chest like a long-shuttered photo developing. For the first time since Marcus, I felt seen not as a project or a phase, but as the man sketching his own redemption. But dawn brought the call that shattered the fragile idyll. My editor, barking about deadlines, then Jordan's phone lighting up with a Missouri area code. He stepped onto the balcony, voice hushed, and though I couldn't hear the words, the tension in his shoulders told the tale. When he returned, his face was a mask, polite, distant. "Trucks ready early. Heading south tomorrow." The lie hung unspoken. It was the job, the life, the pull of unfinished canvases. But in his eyes, I saw the fracture lines, the fear of roots in soil too fertile. We made love that night anyway, slow, reverent bodies mapping territories of trust. No rush, no conquest, just the quiet unraveling of guards long held. His touch was a revelation, fingers tracing ribs like brushstrokes, eliciting gasps that echoed our shared stories. Afterward, tangled in sheets that smelled of him, I traced his compass tattoo. "Does it always point north?" He smiled sadly. "Only when I let it." Sleep claimed us, but doubt seated in the quiet, a storm brewing unseen. Chicago's autumn bit hard that October, leaves carpeting the sidewalks in crimson warnings as Jordan's tomorrow stretched into weeks. His truck stayed parked in my alley, a rusting sentinel, while he picked up odd jobs. Mural sketches for a local coffee shop, portraits for hipsters who paid in lattes. Our rhythms settled into something dangerously domestic. Mornings with his coffee strong as his drawl, me editing photos while he worked at my drafting table, borrowed charcoal dusting the air like forgotten dreams. The city, with its relentless pulse, became our canvas. Nights wandering Lincoln Park, hands brushing in crowds, kisses stolen under the bean's reflective curve. He opened up more, layers peeling like old paint. The brother he'd lost wasn't just gone. He'd been the anchor, the one who pulled Jordan out of the closet at 16 with a shrug and a baseball mitt. Drove us to our first pride in Atlanta, blasting Madonna like it was a victory lap. Loss laced his words, but so did gratitude, a humanism that humbled me. I shared my own ghosts, how photography started as escape after my first crush. A teammate named Riley, ended in playground taunts and a black eye. Dad called it boys being boys. I called it the end of trust. Love crept in unannounced, fierce and unfiltered. It was in the way he'd leave sketches on my pillow, me, captured mid-laugh, eyes alive in ways my lens rarely caught, or how he'd hum old hymns while scrubbing pots, his voice a bomb against the city's clamor. We fought, too, small skirmishes over my workaholic tendencies, his aversion to commitment like it was a chain. "I'm not Marcus," he'd snap when I'd withdraw, and I'd pull him close, murmuring apologies into his hair, the makeup always sweeter than the rift, but cracks spiderwebbed beneath the surface. Late nights, I'd catch him staring at his phone, thumb hovering over a contact labeled Harlan. The rancher from Tulsa, I learned, wasn't just a bigot. He'd been Jordan's mentor once, spotting talent at an art fair and funding his first big break. The fallout wasn't mere cancellation. It was personal, Harlan's email laced with betrayal. "You were like a son, boy. Threw it away for sin." Jordan waved it off as water under the bridge, but I saw the erosion, the way it carved doubt into his confidence. Then came the opportunity, a gallery in Savannah reaching out, old connections thawed by time. "It's huge," he said one crisp evening, pacing my living room as rain tapped the windows like impatient fingers. "Solo show, the works." Pride swelled in me, but so did the shadow of departure. "Go," I urged, masking the ache. "This city's not the only muse." He crossed the room in 2 strides, cupping my face with hands that smelled of turpentine. "You're the muse, Alex. The rest is just paint." We celebrated with rooftop wine under a harvest moon, toasting futures intertwined. But fate, that cruel curator, had other frames in mind. The next morning, my editor dropped a bomb. A cross-country assignment, Route 66 revisited, diners and desolation from Chicago to Santa Monica. 2 months, she said, oblivious to the grenade. Jordan overheard, his sketchpad snapping shut like a guillotine. You're leaving. Hurt sharpened his voice, accusation threading through. It's work, I defended, but it rang hollow, echoing Marcus's excuses. The fight erupted like dry lightning. Words hurled about priorities, fears disguised as barbs. You think I'm bailing? After everything, I shouted, the apartment shrinking around us. He grabbed his jacket, eyes stormy. Maybe I am the stranger again. Maybe that's safer. The door slammed, reverberating through my bones, leaving silence thicker than fog. He returned at dusk, soaked and contrite, a peace offering of takeout faux steaming in the chill. I'm scared, he admitted over steaming bowls. Vulnerability raw as an exposed negative. Last time I let someone in, it ended with Mama's funeral and empty promises. I took his hand, the fight's embers cooling. We're not them. We're us. Road-tripped, storm survived us. Forgiveness came easy, laced with urgency. We fell into bed, bodies reaffirming what words fumbled. His whispers against my skin a litany of stays and homes. Yet the undercurrent pulled stronger. While I prepped for the road, Jordan dove into the Savannah prep, emails flying like swallows. One night, bleary from deadlines, I borrowed his laptop for reference images and stumbled on a thread. Harlan. Not just mentor, but ex-lover. Their history a tangled vine of passion and poison. Photos buried in folders. Young Jordan, laughing in Harlan's arms at a rodeo. Then later, bruised arguments frozen in time. The betrayal hit like a shutter snap. Why hide it? Was I just the rebound, the city boy to cleanse the ranch dust? Confrontation brewed, but life accelerated. My departure loomed. His show was booked. We promised calls, visits, the modern glue of love. The night before I left, we walked the lakefront. Wind whipping Lake Michigan into froth. Write me from every diner, he said, tucking a new sketch into my bag. A compass now pointing to a skyline that looked suspiciously like Chicago's. Our kiss was fierce, a seal against distance. But as my taillights faded in his rearview, doubt shadowed the highway like a tailing storm cloud. Weeks blurred into a montage of greasy spoons and golden hours, my camera capturing facades while my heart framed him. Texts pinged like heartbeats. Miss your terrible coffee. Or, drew a storm that looks just like you, wild and beautiful. But silences grew, his responses thinning as Savannah neared. Then, the call that cracked the lens. Harlan, drunk dialing from the gallery opening, voice slurred with bourbon and spite. Your boy's back where he belongs, city slicker. Always was mine first. The pieces shattered. Harlan's words confirmed the hidden history. The betrayal not in the past but in the omission. Jordan hadn't just omitted, he'd curated, painting over the rot to keep our canvas clean. Rage boiled as I floored the rental toward O'Hare. Flight to Georgia booked on autopilot. Love, it seemed, was the cruelest filter, sharpening hurts into high-contrast lies. Savannah's humid embrace hit like a fever dream, Spanish moss draping oaks like funeral veils as I navigated cobblestone streets to the gallery. The opening thrummed with low chatter and clinking glasses, air thick with magnolia and pretense. Southern hospitality masking the vipers beneath. I slipped in unnoticed, a ghost in khakis, scanning the crowd until I found him. Jordan, center stage in a linen shirt rolled to elbows, laughing with patrons over a canvas of fractured highways, our highway. His eyes lit when they met mine across the room, surprise blooming into joy, then faltering at the steel in my stance. Alex? What? He broke away, pulling me into a shadowed alcove where sculptures loomed like silent judges. The scent of him, paint and salt, nearly undid me, but I held the photo folder like evidence. Harlan, I said, voice low thunder. Not just a client, not just a bigot. You're bigot. The words landed, his face draining of color, the compass tattoo stark against paling skin. He deflated, leaning against cool marble. How long have you known? Long enough to drive here wondering if any of it was real. Pain etched his features, not denial but defeat. It was real, God, Alex, every mile, every touch. Harlan. He was the storm I ran from, not into. The story spilled then, raw as an unpinned negative. Their affair at 22, Harlan's closet deep as Georgia clay. Promises of forever shattered when Jordan demanded light. The mentorship soured to sabotage, Harlan pulling strings to blackball him from southern scenes. I didn't tell you because it wasn't your dirt to dig. I was building something clean with you. Betrayal twisted in my gut. Not the lie, but the isolation it bred. Clean? Like erasing the man who broke you makes us whole. Voices swelled nearby, oblivious to our unraveling, and he gripped my arm, urgent. It wasn't erasure. It was protection. For us. But protection felt like partition, walls higher than Chicago's towers. The confrontation escalated, whispers turning to hisses as Harlan materialized. Bullish frame cutting through the crowd like a freighter. Trouble in paradise? He drawled, eyes raking me with disdain, bourbon breath hot. Jordan stiffened, a shield snapping up. This ain't your business, Harlan. But the older man laughed, cruel as kudzu. Everything about you is my business, boy. That shows on my dime, old-time sake. The revelation gutted me. Harlan's forgiveness funded the night, strings attached like nooses. Fury ignited, a flash fire. I stepped forward, camera instincts framing the scene. Harlan's smug leer, Jordan's trapped anguish. You don't own him, I snarled, voice carrying just enough to draw stares. Harlan's face reddened, veins bulging. Watch your tone, queer. This here's God's country. The slur landed like a slap, but Jordan exploded, shoving him back. Get out. All of it, the money, the gallery, the ghosts. Chaos erupted. Shouts, shattering glass from an overturned tray, patrons scattering like startled birds. Harlan lunged, fist cocked, but I intercepted, the blow glancing my shoulder in a burst of pain. Security swarmed, hauling him out amid curses, the gallery emptying like a punctured lung. In the aftermath, Jordan collapsed against me, sobs racking his frame. I thought I could outrun it. Thought with you I could start clean. We fled to the riverfront, Forsyth Park's fountains murmuring solace under moonlit oaks. There, on a bench scarred by lovers past, truth distilled. I hid him because I was ashamed, Jordan confessed, head in hands. Not of loving men, but of loving wrong once. Feared it'd taint us. I rubbed his back, the ache in my shoulder paling against the one in my heart. Hiding doesn't clean. It festers. But love, it forgives the dirt. Hours passed in unraveling tears, laughter at the absurdity. Plans sketched like new murals. The show survived, Harlan's check torn to confetti, patrons rallying for the authentic artist in their midst. We drove back north at dawn, his truck revived, my rental trailing like a faithful hound. The road felt different now. Not escape, but reclamation. Conflicts forged into stronger frames. Months later, in my Chicago apartment, now ours with his canvases bleeding color into the brick, we hosted a small gathering. Friends from the road, his Savannah allies video calling cheers. He unveiled a piece. 2 figures on a rain-lashed highway, hands outstretched, compass between them pointing not north, but home. To mistakes that map the way, he toasted, eyes locking on mine, hazel depths clear as prairie sky. Life isn't linear, no tidy exposures. There are storms, betrayals that scar but don't define. Loves that demand the full negative, flaws and all. Jordan and I were still navigating, arguments flaring like flash floods, but always circling back to that motel bed, where strangers became salvation. In America's vast heartland, amid diners and dust, we found humanism in the mess. Forgiveness not as erasure, but as the boldest stroke. And in his arms, under city lights that rival any rainbow, I know. This is the shape of our future, crooked and true.